you're a Queen's Gambit player or you like to play Queen's Gambit Accepted, you should be aware of that trap. So if you start with d4, d5, c4, I totally suggest to play e6 or c6 defending d5. But if you still like to go for d takes c4, you should be aware of that trap. Yes. So this pawn on c4 is not free, and yeah, we can easily get this pawn by playing queen a4, which is a double attack, so that will be check and we get this pawn back, as well as we could do something like very simple e3 and try to get this pawn on c4. Now, if I would be black in that position and I would try to think what is the best solution here, I wouldn't try to save that pawn, so I wouldn't try to move like b6 or b5, because in that moment, white is trying to make black's position really, really weak and trying to create a lot of attack. Eventually, white will still be able to get that pawn on c4, but black's pawn structure will be broken. So you can see right now. So after pawn to b5, white will continue with pawn to a4. Again, is that pawn on a4 free? Not at all, because after b takes a4, we create two double pawns on the a file and c file, and after queen takes, for example, a4, it's a double attack, and we fortunately gonna get another pawn on c4. So it's really not worth to play b5, but still, if you're already there, you should be aware that, for example, c6 would be the best move here, or like bishop g7, but not a6, because if a6, white will simply take a takes b5 and get the open file for the rook, and if pawn will retake, we'll just get the free rook up here. Now, if black will decide to go for c6 and exactly what happened in the game, then you should be exactly aware of that trap. So we would take on b5, and now it's a good timing to acknowledge what's going to happen if pawn takes on b5. Then we can see that that rook on e8 will be completely undefended. So compared to every single black piece over there, we can see it's like every single piece is defended except of the rook, because it's so much open. So after c takes b5, white will continue with queen f3, and there is really no way to defend that rook. So black will have to lose at least their bishop or the knight. So for example, after bishop b7, white could take, but then there is still a way to defend after knight b7, because queen can defend up here. But still, it's not great. Also, there is another move like knight to c6, but still, we should get the knight, capture the free piece as soon as you can see it. After bishop g7, we can just retreat our queen back to f3. So what it is about, whenever you see that you're actually made a mistake and you're losing your rook in the next move, do not go for it. Try to change your plan. So for example, move bishop d7 or queen c7, but do not take this pawn b5 and lose the rook.